Hello, welcome to our Wildlife World demonstration of how to plant your bulbs for a summer full of glorious colour, wonderful scent and, fingers crossed, loads and loads of wildlife. I'm Helen.
And I'm Mark.
And Mark's going to show you exactly how best to plant bulbs to get that beautiful summer. Are you a gardener yourself, Mark?
I do a bit of gardening. The thing I really enjoy is looking through all the seed catalogues and bulb catalogues. And that's the exciting part is picking things like this that you know is going to perform later in the year. So that's how the happy winter evenings are spent.
I love it. And you've chosen these 2 packs of bulbs specifically as a new product for Wildlife World.
Yeah, it's something we've not done before. We've been asked about it quite a few times. So we decided this winter to put together a collection or two packs, one for bees, which will attract bees to your garden, and one that will attract butterflies. And there's the different plants and bulbs in each. A bit of a mixture, quite a lot of plants in there. Each one of these packs will, if you planted it in a border, would treat about a square metre. So that's a lot of space, isn't it? It's a lot of space. But equally, you can put them in pots, and that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you how to plant them in pots, get the depth right, get the spacing right, so that you could put a little collection like this, in a corner of a patio or in your garden. Yeah. Let them flower, let them do their thing, attract bees, butterflies, move them around, and you can sort of mix and match.
Okay, so the 2 packs are completely different?
They're predominantly different. There's one plant that's similar to both, which is the one you can see here, this little purple spike Liatris, which is a lovely herbaceous perennial, quite tall, so it needs to go into a deep pot. We're going to put that in this wooden planter in a bit, but it's a taller one for the back of a border, and it will form a really big clump. Eventually, when it's planted out, you'd be looking at something about half a metre across within 4 to 5 years. So they spread really quickly. That's the great thing about bulbs. They're perennial plants, so they keep coming every year, and they just get bigger and bigger. So you get more plants, and you can divide some of them up. I'll show you that a little bit later. I've got one little tip on a plant that you can divide to get more out of it.
Okay, fabulous. Well, should we get going? What are the absolute basics? What do we need to plant bulbs?
So you need decent pots. Now I say decent pots. I've actually picked. I know you asked me this earlier about why have I picked dirty pots. I really like the sort of old effect, the old patina on pots like this.
I can understand that. That's fair enough.
So I was scouring through the garden trying to find some pots. This one I found buried at the back of one of the borders, so I thought that's going to be ideal for the plant I want it to go in.
Saved pot.
I don't like that brand new look. The wooden pots are slightly different, but terracotta, I like the aged look. So you need decent pots, thick walled, nice and sturdy. You need a good compost. Don't be tempted to use garden soil. A lot of people will just dig a bit of soil out of the garden and use that. You need some decent compost that's well drained, and this is a peat-free compost. I only use peat-free compost now, and I heartily recommend that to anybody. All garden centres sell peat-free compost now, and the more of us that persuade them to switch, so much the better. There's no need to use a peat-based compost anymore.
Now that's my problem at a garden centre. When I do go, you get to the front of the garden centre and there are just so many composts to choose from. If we're thinking about bulbs, do I look for something that says bulb-specific compost? Some places
will sell a bulb planting compost. That tends to be traditionally more for indoor bulbs. So if you're planting like hyacinths at Christmas to get, forcing them on indoors, because they tend to have a bit of charcoal mixed in with it. It's a product called bulb fibre. This is just a multi-purpose compost, which you could use to plant pretty much anything. So whether it's a shrub, a herbaceous perennial, or bulbs, it's absolutely ideal. But it's got a bit of nutrient in it, which the plants will need later in the season. It's easy to work with, surprisingly clean to work with as well. We won't get that dirty, hopefully.
And you've mentioned here that you're going to be putting them into pots.
Yeah.
Does that mean I can't put them in my garden or my borders?
You can certainly put them in the borders. The principle of planting is exactly the same, whether it's the depth and the spacing. Some of them will be slightly more tighter in the pots, if you like, because 1 or 2 of these we've got like 12 or 10 bulbs to plant, so they'll last 1 or 2 years, and then you would need to take them out, split them, and perhaps plant them out into a border. But you could quite easily split the collection of plants, split it into 2, replant one half back into a pot, and pop one in the flower border somewhere.
Okay, nice.
So absolutely, the advantage of putting out in a border is that you can spread them over a wider area. This is going to make a really good display for 1 or 2 years in pots, and then you would need to think about separating out.
And if I do put them into my border anywhere in my garden, I should still use compost?
You certainly want to use a bit of compost when you plant, just to help work the soil through a little bit, makes it a bit easier. And with the lily that we're going to plant, I'll show you couple of little tips on that on planting, which applies in pots or in the ground.
Okay, let's have a go then. What are we going to plant first?
So we're going to plant the bee mix. So I'll show you what we've got in there. Put these to one side. So I'm going to start, and I've got some pictures at the side here, so we can see what they'll look like when they flower. This is the butterfly mix, that's the bee mix on the left hand side. This is what we're going to plant. I'm going to start with this beautiful white dahlia.
That is lovely.
Okay, so that will form a plant about 1 metre high, ultimately.
Wow, okay.
If it's in a border, and within 1 to 2 years. So that's what it looks like out of the pack. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
It's a little bit.
Bit odd, but...
A little bit alien-like.
Yeah, a little bit. You can see there where the thing itself was lifted, and that was the spike of the plant last season, cut back. This was lifted and put into the packets, which we've now got. So that's a dahlia. That, this season, will produce probably, might even be about 6 flower heads like that, and it would fill this pot. I'm planting it in just this single thing in this pot because it will fill it quite happily up to about 1 metre.
Gosh, and it being that sort of flat, open shape is why it's particularly attractive to bees?
Yes, absolutely. And the pollen, they're just attracted to it. All of these plants will attract bees and butterflies to them for pollination. Lovely. So it's going to be smothered.
Perfect.
And that's, put it by the back door. By the back door where you can see it and smell it with the lilies and see all the bees and butterflies. And we've had butterflies in the garden already. This weekend my wife and I were just sort of sitting looking at the birds, and there was butterflies flapping around that were just
wow, I haven't seen a
coming to
butterfly
life.
yet.
Not yet, no, just the one. So
it's going to be my mission this weekend. Go on then. So what's the technique for this one then?
So there's a very simple rule of thumb with planting bulbs like this, is you plant them about whatever the height of the bulb is, about twice the amount of compost on top. But before we do that, I've already pre-filled this pot with some compost, but you should put something in the bottom, some broken terracotta, just to cover up the drainage holes.
Okay, yes.
And that stops the compost getting washed through. When you water, obviously the water's going to soak in and it's going to start washing things through. And if you put a bit of terracotta in the bottom, crushed plastic plant pots are really good. Obviously that's an issue that every gardener's got, is a shed full of flower pots, what to do with them. In bigger pots, I've just taken a flower pot and crushed it and popped it in the bottom, and that does exactly the same job. Just something to cover up the drainage holes enough to let them drain through. So I'll pop them back in there.
And have you chosen a slightly bigger pot for this one because it's taller?
It's a single plant, single pot. Yeah, it's taller, about 1 metre. It needs the support, and it will. The sides of this pot will support the plant as it grows quite happily, and it would last. This probably would last 2 to 3 years, maybe more, in a pot like this.
Okay, so, and then put it out in the garden.
Yeah, just plant it out. Yeah, dahlias. Sometimes they need to be lifted. If we get very bad winters, people lift them and put them in a greenhouse just like this and dry them out so they don't get frosted. We've never lifted one in the garden yet, and they come back year after year.
Wow.
Absolutely fine.
Okay.
So that's just going to settle in the bottom of the pot there. If you can see that. That little spike there upwards. It's quite difficult to tell with some of the other bulbs we've got. I'll show you those in a bit.
Okay.
But this one's a little bit more
easy. This is a bit more obvious
to work out what's what. And then it really is just a simple matter of just breaking the compost up. Obviously the compost, they come in on pallets in the garden centre, so they get quite compressed. So it's just worth working it through and just filling it back in.
No water at that early stage?
Not at this stage.
Okay.
Doesn't need it. We will water it in once we put it outside a little bit later on. And you can see, I don't know whether you can see on camera there, you see these little these little spheres here? Nothing to worry about. That's slow release fertiliser. So it's put into the compost to give it a bit of life. If you squeeze them, there's a little liquid inside and they pop. It's not anything, nothing sinister.
Fantastic. So you're covering this with twice the
twice
depth
the
of the
depth.
bulb itself.
Yep.
Right.
Now we're going to end up with all our pots not looking very exciting, aren't we? For the next few months, they're going to be...
Well, we're optimistic.
A pot of promise, but I'll do something else to it when we've planted them all, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So there we go, just fill it with compost, just sort of firming it in roughly, so within 2 to 3 centimetres of the top.
So you don't squash it flat,
the last thing you want to do is completely squash it, because then you just knock
yeah.
all the air out of the compost. You want it to be
Right,
open.
okay.
You want the water to be able to soak through when you do water it, and you want a little reservoir there so that when you water, it can fill up to the top and then just drain away slowly.
Right.
Okay, so never fill your pot right to the top, because then if you water it, it just runs off.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I get it now.
So there we go, and a little label made from one of the offcuts in the workshop this afternoon. So recycle where we can.
I like it.
Okay, so that's the Dahlia.
One done. What's next?
Let's do this wooden one. So 2 things in here. So wooden planter, treated wood, so it's not going to rot. That's good. Metal bands, quite an attractive thing, isn't it? When I picked it out earlier, it didn't have any holes in the bottom, so I just took a drill, popped a couple of drainage holes in the bottom of the pot, because you need it to drain.
Okay.
So that the water goes through. And then, as I said earlier, a bit of terracotta in the bottom, just to cover up the holes, stop the compost from washing through.
And what have we
And what have
chosen
we got?
for this one?
So we've got the Liatris, which was the one I mentioned at the start. So this beautiful spike of flower.
That looks like quite a tall plant again.
That would be similar size to Dahlia, perhaps about 80 centimetres, something like that. But like I said, it makes a big clump of a plant. So a couple of years in a pot like this, and it'd be ready to go back out. But we're going to mix in with that the lily, because that again is tall. So these two together, you'll have a beautiful spike of purple flowers, and then some yellow lilies just poking their head above the top.
Lovely.
Really nice. Bit of scent, by the back door, by the kitchen window, so you can get the scent coming through. Absolutely lovely. So same thing again. We will fill it with some compost. Now, if you look at these, which way up do you think we're going to plant it?
Oh, I'm going to say that's the route, that way.
Spot on.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some bulbs are quite hard to tell.
Yes. Yeah, because there's something sort of there.
Yeah, you can just see the shoots coming. And I think we've got about 10 of these to plant. And
so you get 10 in the packet.
10 of those. I think it's 10, and 1 lily. Beautiful little yellow lily bulb. Bright yellow, really strongly scented. Can't beat them. I'll show you a little tip with planting that in a minute.
But if you wanted to mix the others together, that wouldn't matter.
No
You've
reason
only
why
chosen this for your aesthetics.
The only reason I'm doing it like this is because the Dahlia on its own will be fantastic. These are quite tall, and then we've got yellow Coreopsis, which is this one here, which forms a sort of lower clump. So if you can imagine the pots together, you're going to get a tiered effect with the planting. Taller ones at the back, shorter ones at the front, and you can mix and match.
Which is then, if you were planting them in your garden or your border, you'd do the same. You'd go the taller ones at the back and bring a little tiered effect right down to the
Taller
front.
plants at the back,
So
shorter ones at the front. Yeah, so I'm going to fill this, bearing in mind the size of that bulb, we want that to be about 7 or 8 centimetres deep.
So the same again, twice the depth.
Yep, so I'll fill this to within about that sort of distance. There we go. And then let's tip those out, see how many of those we've got. It's about 10, isn't it, I think? But let's do the lily first, because I'll show you a little tip with these. Lilies, can you see on there, they're quite fleshy. They're quite a fleshy bulb. If you just feel it, it's a very different type of bulb to that, isn't it?
It is. I'd worry that I'd do some damage to it.
So it's got these scales, if you like, around the bulb itself. And that's the way up it would grow naturally. The sort of problem with lilies occasionally is that they can get water inside these scales and they can just rot off a little bit. So 2 things to do with it. Plant it on its side. Doesn't affect the plant at all. I've seen bulbs in the past planted upside down by people, and they just grow completely naturally and flower, albeit slightly shorter, but
that's amazing.
It does work.
I like that.
The shoots find their way up.
Yeah.
So plant it on its side, and then any water's going to run round. But also, handful of gravel. Doesn't really matter what sort of gravel it is. And I'm going to plant this lily just towards the back of the pot. Handful of gravel in there, on its side, and that just helps everything drain through.
Really?
Simple as that.
And the roots are still take?
Yeah, the roots will, once the roots are in contact with the soil, they'll work their way through.
Yeah.
And yeah, you lessen the risk of it rotting off.
I like
good
it. Good
little tip there.
Yeah.
And then with these little chaps, yeah, very, very fine roots on them, but we're just going to plant those. Make sure we do get the right way up. It's not easy to tell. You can see on that one far more easily. The shoots are coming there, so that's a lot easier to tell.
Oh yes.
And I'm spacing them about 10 centimetres, something like that, apart.
Again, though, could that be dependent on the look that you're going for? If you wanted something slightly sparse or something more busy?
Yeah, I mean, what I want with this really is it to fill the pot really quickly within 1 or 2 years. If these were going out in a border, let's say that's a flower border and we were planting them out, I'd probably put them that kind of distance apart. Okay. And where you can, plant them in sort of 3s or odd numbers. Always looks better.
We do like an odd number, don't we, with these things?
Always just
There's no explanation behind it, but
looks and feels better.
Yeah.
So there we go. Pop those in there like that, and that's going to give us massive spikes of purple flower and yellow lily behind it. It's a really nice mixture of colour.
Okay. And more of the same on top.
Same compost. Yeah.
Would you add any fertiliser at any point?
Not with these. You won't need to. Okay. No, there's a bit of fertiliser in the compost, so you wouldn't need to do that. You'd water them while they're flowering. You might need to do a bit of liquid feed maybe later in the season, particularly with the next one that we're going to plant, which isn't the bulb.
How often do you think we should? I mean, if they're going to be outside, we're liable to a few wet summers here, but how often would you? Just
depends on the weather, the season. Once or twice a week maybe. Yeah, a little bit more. Make sure I've got the right labels in it. There we go. And that's it. And again, leaving that gap around the pot so that the water can soak in. The thing also you might find, of course, is that we put these outside, we'll water them, we'll let the rain do whatever it does, and the compost will settle. Okay. Always does. So then just top it up.
You could add a bit more on.
Yeah, add a bit more compost to it.
Lovely.
Okay.
Next.
So let's put that one to one side. Right, this is probably the least exciting in terms of what it looks like now.
Thanks.
But probably the most exciting in terms of what it's going to do. So that.
You might accidentally throw that away.
You might. You've got to be really careful taking that out of the pack.
Yeah.
That is this one, Coreopsis.
Right.
So there's two lovely things with this. I mean, obviously it's going to attract bees and butterflies, which is why we're planting it.
Definitely.
It's a beautiful yellow flower that flowers in the summer. Really pretty, masses of them. You can see on the picture there. But if you just
stunning colour.
Just hand me that black pot there. So that is what it's going to be as it starts to shoot.
Okay.
So you can see this lovely sort of feathery foliage.
Yeah.
Really pretty.
Oh, it's lovely.
So this is it, very early in the season.
What are we talking? A few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, once this is planted and it's, we can just see some shoots coming on it. Within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll probably just start to see some shoots coming through, and that is enough to fill this pot within a season or so, quite easily.
Impressed.
Yeah. This one here, this is probably a 3-year-old pot, so it doesn't take an awful long time for something like that to grow very, very quickly. And you know what I said earlier on about splitting and separating?
Yes.
So you could take this now. You could, if you bought this from a garden centre, you could split and divide this quite happily.
Okay.
Plant a chunk out in a pot, put something, put it in the border, and you've got probably 3 or 4 plants there.
And each of those will then continue to grow and develop. Okay.
But I think that's that's what does it for me on a lot of these plants. Is the flower later in the season is lovely, but the foliage, it's an added thing in itself.
Yeah,
so
true.
Early part of the season, you can get this lovely little cushion of foliage, and then the flower coming on it like that.
Very nice.
So
okay.
Yeah, not
So technique for planting this one.
Well, it's not going to matter too much. If it was a larger plant in a pot, it's pretty obvious which way up it is, but it doesn't really matter. But we're just going to put this in nice and carefully. So I'm going to move that out of the way. I'll come to that in a minute. You might wonder why I've got a glass of water there. And then we'll just cover that up. There we go.
Excellent.
Same thing.
Okay.
Just firm it in very lightly. Pop a label in so you don't forget what it is. And then already, we're going to sit that in the corner of our patio. Yeah. Pop that one back over there. I've tried to pick pots again with a different height, so it kind of gives the illusion already. But that's how we're building the picture up. So you've got a nice low clump of this yellow Coreopsis, you've got the purple, the lily, the yellow lily there, and the white Dahlia is this big massive flower at the back, and then bees and butterflies, as far as the eye can see.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Last but not least.
Last one in the collection is an anemone, which is this little one here. Well, I managed to find one in flower actually in the garden centre at the weekend. You know, I said about looking at seed catalogues and that sort of thing. I went to a garden centre to buy 2 bags of compost at the weekend and came away with a trolley full of all sorts of things, including these. So I'll take these home tonight and plant them.
That is a stunning colour.
Isn't it? That's actually more of a double flower. The one that's in this pack is a single flower.
Yeah.
But yeah, the colour is just superb, isn't it? Can you imagine that against a yellow? Yes,
that would look beautiful.
That be stunning?
If I was a bee.
You'd be there, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Okay.
So, little trick with these. Again, we can probably be a little bit more technical with the planting here. We can just sort of fill the pot up, nice old terracotta pot, scavenged from my wife's little secret store.
She won't know. She'll never find out.
She does now. So, these are anemones, and they're in. I've just popped them in a little cup of water because the way to get the best out of these, they've been soaking for 3 or 4 hours now, but they're rock hard. They're like little bullets, little bits of gravel.
Okay.
If you soak them, they get off to a much better start. So give them 24 hours in a cup of water, and
just covered with water.
Yeah, just pop them in. They've actually, in the few hours that I've done it, they've swollen up a little bit already, and they're just noticeably softer.
Whilst we're on it, how if you have these bulbs, how long can you keep them before you plant them?
That's a great question. So
where do you keep them?
Where do you keep them? So they're seasonal plants. So you would be buying them from us now or in a garden centre, sort of January, February, March. They really want to be planted by the end of March or into April. Okay. Leave them any longer than that, they'll dry out, and doubly important to soak something like this, so that it doesn't, because they're tiny little bulbs. They'll dry out really easily. So get them planted as soon as you can. But there's 2 bulb seasons. There's the spring bulbs, which will flower in the summer, and summer bulbs which will flower in the autumn. So you need to get them in as soon as you've got them. Really.
If you do have to keep them though in a cool, dark place.
Yeah, cool and dry in your garage or something. Just somewhere where they're not going to bake. Don't put them in the greenhouse where they're going to sort of bake in the sun. Just keep them cool and plant them out as soon as you can.
Okay.
All of us have been in the garage and found a packet that we bought 2 years ago that we forgot about. We've all done it.
Yeah.
And there's something I recommend to everybody is take them home, plant them, or put them right by the back door where you're going to deal with it straight away.
Yeah, sounds fair enough. Okay.
So these actually, we can scatter these about more of these pots because this pot's quite small realistically, and we can do this with our finger. We can just poke them in again. It's twice the depth, but probably only 5 in there. That's all it needs. So I'll put 5 in there, and I've got a few left. It's probably easier, isn't it?
Yeah, I like your technique.
There we go. So we've still got a load left there. So we could put just a couple in there.
Now, to my untrained eye, how do you know which way around to put these, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter with these. I don't think there's any way you could tell.
No, I was struggling, sorry.
No, doesn't matter at all. So in they go, and let's put them in with that one because then that will make a nice little mixture.
And then how long are we talking?
I would hope you'd expect to see some life in these within a month. Certainly, I'd be really surprised if the Coreopsis doesn't come up sooner. The anemones are one of the earliest ones to flower. Should start to see some foliage coming through. The lily, you'll see poking through quite early. So, we're what, mid-March now? I would have thought end of April you'll start to see some shoots and things coming. Don't panic if you don't, because they always catch up. But, you will see them.
And then at the end of the season, we leave them, we cut them back,
You would cut them back, so the foliage would gradually start to die back. Things like this anemone, you can leave those in, you can leave the Coreopsis in, or you could plant it out if you wanted to plant it out on a border or let it grow bigger and separate. they would just benefit from being tidied back at the end of the season.
Yep.
The Dahlia, much the same. The foliage will, about October, November, will get hit by the frost, and you just cut it back and leave it. As long as this is in a protected part of the garden, so up against a wall, it's going to be nice and sheltered over the winter. The frost isn't going to harm it. Be absolutely fine. That's why it's really important to put the crocks in the bottom of the pots and get the drainage in there, because that's the sort of the thing in the winter with terracotta pots. If they're sitting on a patio like this and the pots freeze, the water drains to the bottom of the pot, freezes the root. So if you've got plenty of drainage, and ideally sit the pot on something. So even something as simple, probably the wrong size, even something as simple as a few bits of terracotta. It's not level, but just to sit it
good trick though.
in the patio, so the water can drain away.
And you said there was a little tip you could give us if we...
I did. Yeah, so it doesn't really look very exciting, does it? So, we're talking about these as a Mother's Day present. There you go, Mum. Great. It doesn't look very exciting now, does it? But if we're looking at end of April, May, for the foliage to start coming through, we can do something now just to sort of bump that along a little bit. So we sell packs of wildflower seeds, and I've done this with ordinary grass seed in the past, but I thought wildflower seed's absolutely ideal. We'll get a packet. This pack, I think, will treat 2 square metres, if I remember rightly. So we can just get some of that. Just sprinkle it very lightly.
Just onto the top.
Over the compost like that. And we'll do that on... Won't do it on the small one, I think that'll look a bit odd with a wildflower meadow in there, but... The nice thing about this is that it will give you a bit of foliage probably fairly quick.
Okay.
So you'll get a sort of carpet of foliage. And then you've got the bulbs, you've got the bulbs that are going to attract bees and butterflies, but you've also got a bit of a wildflower mix in there as well. So you imagine that in the corner of your patio. Look lovely, wouldn't it?
Your bees couldn't be happier and you couldn't be happier.
And then that really just needs very, very lightly mixing in.
Yeah. So you don't need to put any more fertiliser on top?
Nope. Only if, when we water it, if the compost sinks, then top it up with compost, just leaving that sort of 2 centimetre gap around the top. And that's it. So you've got, for a pack, which is $9.99 for a pack of bulbs, and a couple more pounds for a packet of wildflower seeds if you do that, you've got something I think that's going to look spectacular. It's a square metre of planting in a border, or less or more, depending on how you space the pots out.
Quite a good.
And plants that will just keep coming every year. So, this isn't just a bunch of cut flowers. This is something that will come year after year and gets bigger and bigger.
Thank you very much. And we have to say that, of course, if we show the 2 packets of bulbs here, these are available on our website at the moment, wildlifeworld.co.uk. If you're watching before Mothering Sunday 2020, then at the moment, if you spend more than £25 on our website, you get free delivery. So these 2 together cost?
Well, they're $9.99 each.
Okay.
So you get free, that's roughly £20. Spend another £5, you'll get free delivery. So in effect, it'll cancel each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's lots of other things we've got on the website. There's a couple of products we ought to talk about there.
And if you do, then we will put them into a gift box for you as well.
If we've got the right things. So we picked our little bee tin there as an extra thing. We've got a nice gift box there. That will hold 4 packs of bulbs or 2 packs of bulbs and something else. So the bee tin is ideal. That's a little bee house for solitary pollinating bees. Lovely little gift. We can squeeze that in so we can actually make up a gift box, depending on what the products are.
Okay. So take a look at our website, and as Mark says, you could purchase both sets of bulbs, you could purchase 1 set of bulbs and something else, a nest box, perfect for nesting season at the moment.
The paper potters. Tell me about
this.
You've not seen those before?
I don't think I have.
So I mentioned earlier about plastic pots being a real problem, in terms of recycling.
Yeah.
Well, this is a little device to make your own pots. So
out of newspaper?
Out of newspaper. So you basically, I'm not going to demonstrate it because you know what it's like doing demonstrations live. So you just put a roll of paper around it, crush it in the base there, and as you can see there, we've got a little ready to go pot for a few small seeds or
for seedlings
or make it slightly taller. It's ideal for sweet peas, and the great thing with them is that they just rot away. So you can, once your plant is growing, you can just plant that out and it rots away and disappears. So
and
really
just
neat.
Tell us quickly about the last thing that we've got on the table. That's our new Birdbath.
Yeah, Birdbath drinker, waterer, brand new, only arrived last week with us. That's made from recycled plastic and bamboo fibre, which we're calling polyboo, believe it or not, polyboo. But it's a fantastic product. You can see it's stepped. So, in terms of all sorts of insects, mammals, lacewings, ladybirds, bees, whatever it is, there's a place for everything to drink from. And as the water level goes down, they can still get to it without getting into trouble. So it's a really nice little product. And in a nice gift box as well. So that on its own will make a fantastic gift.
Yeah,
really nice product.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And yes, do take a look at the website. As we mentioned, we're offering free delivery on any order over £25 until Mothering Sunday. And happy planting.
Thanks for watching.